Welcome to your reading. I just recorded about 4 minutes and I was like, yeah, let's delete that. Let's restart because it was basically me choosing to do your chart and yeah, then I was talking about my skin being all messed up from having an allergic reaction to food and I was like, okay, there's a 4 minutes that I'm trying to have my readings be a little bit shorter, more concise. That's kind of one of my goals for this year. So yeah. All right. So let's take a look. So I read the email. Where's my phone? So yeah, basically 1 degree Virgo rising, Mercury ruled chart. Um, and the moon is in Gem on the midheaven, and that is very okay. So you have North Node in Aries, eighth house. All right. And yeah, Cancer Sun 11th. Saturn on the IC. All right. Yep. Yep. So, yeah, so basically what I can say right off the bat is childhood, when you have Saturn, I see Saturn, especially in Sag, right? Um, and what's your Mercury doing? Okay. Gotcha. So I imagine that um hmm, it probably wasn't easy to feel understood and feel heard growing up in your most likely in your household. I'm not, gonna say that you have like a negative relationship with your parents, right? What I'm saying is that Saturn, people with Saturn on the IC, Saturn is the planet of restriction. The IC down here, right? You see Saturn, it rules our childhood and our deep unconscious, right? So when there's a planet like Saturn down there, oftentimes people have very faint memories of their childhood. I noticed that with all the outer planets that people can have difficulty really remembering childhood. It seems, and sometimes they can over idealize it or under idealize it. It just seems that they have to like in some way in order to achieve their highest dharma, their highest potential gain in this life, they have to overcome something from childhood, which in the case of Saturn, and I've had numerous clients, friends, just people I've come to know with that. And the theme always seems to be something along the lines of a family structure that was either overly traditional, strict, restrictive, didn't allow them to really have fun and express themselves in the way that they wanted to. So, from a very basic level, and I was talking about this today, creativity comes when, or creativity, which is essentially us with you being with your authentic self, right? Um, which is the goal of every reading I do is like to help that person, you know, with that journey of individuation and understanding who they really are, right? Because society pushes us into a box, tradition pushes us into a box, and that might not work for us, right? So with Saturn here, it can. I've seen it definitely with very traditional families, with families that push a level of perfectionism on their children, where the children sometimes feel like love was not, it was conditional, not always, but um, for example, like the very high achievement family that only the parents only really show love if they get the good grades or if they are good in sports or if they do whatever you know um is deemed by the family to be to be good, right? So Saturn I see in Sagittarius also. Oftentimes I've seen people like that feel a little bit held back when it comes to their ability to find expansive philosophy and truth. Usually it's like, you know, 30s after the Saturn return that opens up a lot. Of course, I'm not a fortune teller, so um, your astrology, the way I see it is it's your free will meets the chart. So I I don't see, for example, who you may have met, right? What decisions you may have made. Um, so it could be the case that you overcame that earlier, but definitely I think for someone with Saturn on the IC, there tends to be these introjects, right? Um, Self-limiting beliefs. Like so many like a lot of people that I come across, they describe it as like voices in their head, and they don't realize it sometimes till later in their life, like, oh, that's my mom's voice, that's my dad telling me um what I'm doing isn't good enough, right? And psychologically it can lead them down a very difficult trail because they start to become their own worst enemy, and they start to project that perfectionism and restriction onto others, right? It can have all kinds of difficulties in relationships. It could even be it can even be related to having some level of shame. Um, so overcoming that is really about learning to speak about the the things that are that feel vulnerable to speak about. Um, just opening up, right? Opening up, and what's really tough is being a Cancer, right? Cancer sun. Now your moon is in Gemini, so that is a really interesting combo. I've seen some people with that, and they're two very different signs, right? So like the Cancer, for example, like the Cancer side of you, there's this adage with Cancer where it's a crab. It's like the crab, and when the Cancer crab gets hurt, it crawls back in its shell and refuses to trust again, right? That's like the whole adage with the Cancer, who, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is afraid, um, can be afraid after they've been hurt. Like, let's say they get cheated on by a partner early on in their life, and then they just self-sabotage, or just don't open up, are not open to other relationships, for example. So you have that, and I think with the Saturn IC, um, I mean, like an example of how that could work out is, I mean, you have to really see any of that early programming just for what it is, you know? A lot of people with the Saturn IC that are my clients, they always a lot of times they feel like the black sheep in their family, or like they just never really felt seen, is how it's described a lot. They never really felt seen or respected. Some of them might have a more spiritual, abstract way of seeing the world and communicating, or just they tend to be a bit different, right? And I can even see in your chart you have Mercury trine Saturn, which is a really, really good indicator of intelligence. And you have a third house Pluto, another good indicator of intelligence. So you're clearly intelligent, right? But the thing is, you have a 12th house Mercury. So um, that could be something where, if at a young age you were like your ideas were shunned, your way of seeing the world, or like you might have something you said, and if it gets shut down, it can become this repressed part of you, right? In the 12th house, Mercury 12th house, yeah, it can be someone who holds themselves back from speaking their true selves, and might be a bit shy, right? And that's also, Cancer can be quite shy. Now, I haven't gotten to your Gemini moon yet, and the fact that Mercury rules your chart as a Virgo rising, right? Um, but yeah, so what can happen sometimes with this is that the path can be taken to try to blend in rather than really be one's true self. And that's never, going to work, right? Because everything, the whole point of life, or one of the points of life, is to be our authentic self and to not just give in to how society wants us to be. So, so with being a Cancer, I think that there's definitely this theme of bravery, like with your North Node in Aries, right? Like, um, and always getting up, right? Always, okay, born on the same day as my brother, 4th of July. Always getting up after anything, after you get hurt or after bad things happen. It's just like this need to, yeah, to not give up. Um, you have Chiron with your moon 10 degrees away. So, um, so with this Cancer Sun, Gemini moon, right? So it's your yin, your yang, the two most important parts of your personality. The sun is your identity, the masculine, yang to your moon, which is the feminine part of your identity, or just who you are. It's your emotions, your needs, right? It's non-negotiable. The sun is more of your, yeah, it's like you are your sun. You're more aware of it. Um, and then the rising is more so the mask that you wear, but it's not that surface level. It's a big part of your personality and just sort of how you navigate life, right? Um, so so with Gemini, it is a very Cancer is an extremely deep sign. Cares a lot about security, cares a lot about home, family. It really likes to be grounded in a nice, stable environment. Gemini is your moon sign, right? So, like I said, what the moon sign needs is non-negotiable, right? Like, I don't like to use myself as an example, but I'm a Sagittarius moon, and I can't be happy without variety, travel, you know, just like different experiences. So Gemini is actually kind of similar to that. It's the opposite sign of Sagittarius. And Gemini moons, they need a lot. They're very, very curious. They're extremely curious, and they need a lot of stimulation, intellectual stimulation, and just stimulation in general. Now it's important for a Gemini, and they're very youthful. Like they have like a very youthful disposition and kind of way of, they tend to stay young on some level, right? Um, so Cancer is like the elder, right? Cancer is the elder, and well, I'd say Cancer Capricorn, that axis is like the axis of it's very mature. So there can be this back and forth, right? Which the Cancer part of you, which might want to be more balanced home life, like I said, about your sun sign. I don't need to really go into Cancer that much, right? But you understand it's emotional and more introverted, can be hurt easily, um, but super empathetic, compassionate, magical, water sign. So it's very, very good at reading through things, and it feels a lot, right? And then you have the Gemini moon. So what's interesting about air moons, Gemini is an air sign, is that sometimes they tend to intellectualize their emotions. So, for example, something difficult can happen, and let's say there's what's a Scorpio, a Cancer moon, and a Gemini moon, or a Taurus moon and a Gemini moon. The Taurus moon might feel that thing right away, cry about it or whatever they need to do, right? They might meet their emotional needs a lot easier in that moment. Sometimes air moons will push that and they won't feel it till 7 months later or like 8 months later. And when I say intellectualizing emotions, I mean the classic example is the person who's in therapy and they're just talking about their problems and all that, but they're not actually doing what they call as the work, right? Where they feel the emotions and they allow the emotions to take over per se, right? Or yeah, basically, I guess you could say a more embodied process, therapeutic process. So, um, like for example, something sad happens, like they get into a breakup, and instead of just sitting around and crying and kind of getting over it somatically, they might, talk about how sad they are, but then try to distract themselves by doing something else. Because that's the thing with Gemini moon is it's a very on the move type of moon sign. Now, this is very important to know about because Gemini moon is well, it's opposite Saturn too, so that's huge. So this is very, very important, right? Because Saturn, because the moon's on the midheaven and Saturn's on the IC. So mm, basically, the way I would put this is that the moon. I don't like to say like the moon is the mother, um, and the sun is the father. I've just seen it work out in way too many different versions, but I look at it psychologically like the moon is like the upbringing, right? So moon opposite Saturn is one of the most challenging aspects you can have. It tends to make people feel, especially growing up, quite sad. There can be, periods of sadness, loneliness, um, you know, lots of obstacles when it comes to really feeling, supported and emotionally nourished, right? I would say with Moon opposite Saturn, your relationship with your mother is extremely determinant to your adult relationships, or how successful those are. Um, so this could be the classic example of a very strict, emotionally cold mother. Um, but if you did receive emotional support, um, overall growing up, the easier it will be for you to, form healthy emotional relationships as an adult, right? Um, so as I was saying with the Saturn, I see Saturn moon is very difficult, because the moon in Gemini, it is very lively and just wants to go, but the opposition with Saturn, it creates lots of obstacles in the way of that Gemini moon. Um, so sharing emotions is never easy with Saturn opposite moon. It can make others think that you're emotionally distant or don't care. Um, and it can just a lot of people with this, even if they're not isolated people, a lot of times when I talk to them, they experience themselves as isolated. Um, right? So it's like the whole thing where someone can be in a crowd but still feel lonely, right? So yeah, like definitely a big one. Yeah, so very yeah, like there can just be this self-consciousness too, where it's like difficult for them to let go and have fun. Now I'm saying this isn't permanent. I mean, yeah, it's permanent, but when people do work on these aspects, a lot of times it might be like Saturn return, 29 or mid 20s when they start to really work on themselves and look at themselves that they start to make these changes, and then these can be turned into positive aspects, right? Aspects and assets, as I said. But with Saturn, with Moon and Saturn, it creates melancholy, right? Um, and you can imagine like Saturn, yeah, it can be very, very cold. So yeah, people, it's just like the person at the party who is self-conscious and doesn't like want to let themselves go and have fun and just be, which is very anti-Gemini Moon. So that's kind of like this battle between the two where um you try to figure out, okay, how can the Gemini moon be unleashed? And the thing with Saturn is that you're past your Saturn return already, so everything gets better with time with Saturn. Um, so people who have Saturn in their chart like you do, their lives usually, in my experience, have gotten better around 30, 31, like post Saturn return, right? Sometimes the Saturn return is really difficult for them. A lot of times it isn't for people for in my experience, but I've seen both. But they really find that life usually is easier and lighter post Saturn return. Um, so I would say also sometimes they feel like they have to be their own parent. Sometimes they feel like at least on some level, the support that they would have needed from their mother just wasn't there. And yeah. So it's really, really important to work hard when it comes to sharing your emotions. Um, the first step is that conscious realization of this whole, potential problem, whatever is resonating of what I'm saying, just being able to be aware of it and admit it and talk about it, right? Um, awareness is step one, right? A lot of people with this, they just never gain that awareness and you know, they just blame other people, they project, like I said, if it makes someone very self-conscious, um, they might just or like self-critical, they might be very, very critical of other people. So um I've seen a lot of people with this very afraid to get close to people, vulnerable. And because Saturn rules older people, sometimes they enjoy being friends with much older or much younger people, usually much older from my experience. Um, so yeah, and it's not about like being emotional or not. It's like you have feelings like everyone else, but there's barriers that you have to overcome, restrictions that you have to get past to be able to truly expose them, right? Let them out. So it is like with everything with Saturn, hard work, perseverance, patience, and different relationships that can come into your life that can help you with this, right? Um, which on that note, I must say that you have your Jupiter, which is the planet of luck, and we really look at what house it's in the seventh house of relationships. So it doesn't get much better than that for having luck with partnerships and having very, very most people I know with seventh house Saturn or seventh house Jupiter are, most of them would describe their life as being quite, or as them would describe themselves as being quite lucky when it comes to romantic relationships. Um, and yeah, so I mean, maybe it wasn't until like your Saturn return, but or like 30s or late 20s, but regardless, Jupiter seventh house, usually there is a lot of expansion and growth that comes through relationships and just good fortune, good karmic fortune when it comes to meeting the right people at the right time. So yeah, perhaps that's an avenue, maybe a seventh house Jupiter, seventh house Pisces with Jupiter, and it could be someone who has very spiritual relationships, not meaning that they have to meditate with their partner or anything, but the nature is very ethereal, very romantic, very um, smooth, and filled with compassion and healing and growth, right? So it's like through the relationships, regardless of whether the person's an atheist or not, there's still some level of growth that comes through it, right? Karmic growth. Like it's like imagine meeting someone who, let's say with what I was just talking to you about, meeting someone who you feel super comfortable around. Um, and because you feel comfortable around them, you're able to let yourself go in a way that's typically difficult, right? Um, so then that leads to a lot of healing with everything in relation to that, that moon opposite Saturn. Now, one thing I want to say about the Saturn moon is that because they're on angles, right? The IC, the bottom of the sky when you're born, the midheaven, the moon at the top. Well, first of all, your moon on the midheaven is a very, very good. It's very, very good for being well seen by the public. Like, let's say you're doing something like, I don't know, like let's say you're doing something like I'm doing, or I don't know, just social media. You the moon, or even like anything like politics or whatever, right? Business. The moon midheaven people, they are seen well by the public. Um, People who don't know them feel like they can trust them. And also because the moon is what you need, the moon on the midheaven, it makes someone very, very connected to their dharma and to their mission, to their purpose. You could say career, but I don't like to limit it at career, because some people, their dharma is, different. I mean, it is different at different times, right? It might be at one stage to raise the family, right? Another stage, it might be to be really involved in some type of project, right? And another stage, it might be something more related to their internal growth, right? So it's not easy. It's not just like an obvious thing, right? But um I would say that Saturn opposite midheaven with the moon opposite it basically just talks about how whatever resonated for me explaining that to you, that needs to be overcome in order for you to maximize your potential in life, in your mission. And I'll explain to you a little bit more. A lot of people with the Saturn IC, I ask them like, so how old were you when you moved away from your home? And there's different answers, but like most people with that tell me like that they want to get out very like as fast as they could. It's just not everyone is able to. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't stand their family. Also, I don't know if you still live where you're born, but well, it's on a moon. Yeah, actually, no, it's not so bad. I mean, it's on a moon line, um, a moon midheaven line, and Saturn IC. The Saturn IC is not great, but I guess the moon MC, yeah. But yeah, I would imagine that you probably um and that's another reading I offer. It's called astrocartography. If you're ever interested, let me know. I'll give you a reduced price. It's like basically we all have different hot spots and cold spots geographically, and I go through the entire world and tell you kind of according to this technique called astromapping, where we go continent to continent. That one's a live reading. But anyways, so yeah, Saturn IC line, Singapore. I don't know. I think there's good and bad for you there. The moon kind of does help out and make it feel very, very cozy. But yeah. So, anyways, what I was gonna say is that like that example, right, where that person wanted to get out of their early, their family home, whatever. They leave and they feel more free. They feel like, okay, I can finally breathe, right? But then with this energy, what it's saying is that until you go and heal, I don't want to say heal those relationships, right? Because that's not always what it is. But until you go heal the energy there, right? Because you can still heal the energy between you and someone else. Like let's say like um, you know, let's say it's with let's say I'm in a fight with someone, right? Or I lose a friend, right? Um, but but there's like, well, actually, the classic example that I always use is like there's family members where it's just too much. Maybe they drink, maybe they are just so toxic. Sorry, I keep standing up like this, stretching. Maybe they're so toxic that you try and just doesn't work, right? So you have to make that boundary, and you can still heal and find compassion for that person. Let's say it's a narcissistic parent, right? all all their kids dislike them. They have problems with all over their life, but they've hurt not you, but just example, right? They've hurt the person a lot. I always tell people write a letter and burn the letter. So write the letter from your heart to them, to their not to them where they're at now, to their higher self. And you'd be amazed what can come out. It's always astonishing what can come out when people do that exercise, right? To their higher self, you're speaking to them if they were able to get past all of their BS, right? All the ego pain, all of everything staying in the way, all the conditioning, right? All the toxic tendencies, whatever it is. So that on your side, that clears things up, right? That clears things up on your side, and then you're not stuck in that place of having hatred or having, this negative energy, because that's when one loses, right? That's when one loses is when, someone gets hurt, let's say with the example by their parents, but then they have this hatred within themselves. And they say about resentments or hatred, it's like drinking poison and thinking that someone else is going to get sick from you drinking the poison, right? So it's almost like, you know, good. It's the strategic move to get rid of that. Okay. Oh shit. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. I just had remembered something. I just need to make sure that I did it. I think I did. Yes, I did. Okay. Got it. Yeah. So once that, whatever that is overcome, and I think also like with the Saturn there, it's like it's someone who wants to maybe be a mother, someone who wants, a lot of times I see great mothers with this placement, because they are almost like, all right, I want to give my child what I didn't have. Um, so yeah. And I think, yeah, Moon conjunct midheaven, that could also be just, a very strong inclination to find one's purpose, whether it's through career, through parenthood, but like have a big emotional attachment to their career choice or to what they're doing dharma wise, right? Um, so it's really important to be doing what you're doing to please yourself, not parents or society or anything like that, right? Because the moon is, the moon on the midheaven person, like I said, they want to have that emotional love and connection for what they're doing, right? So also with bosses, it's really, really important to, if there are any bosses, to actually respect them, or else there can be like a lot of discomfort. Anyone who holds any authority in any type of work, place of work, right? Um, and yeah, a lot of people with that, I think they'd also they want to have like a level of security in what they're doing in their profession. Um, and yeah, yeah. So also they can have like a very close emotional connection with people they work with, And yeah, just so it's really, really important with that to love what you do. Um, Now, because it's in Gemini, midheaven ruled by Mercury, 12th, there is a spiritual component here, right? Um, and I think that with midheaven and Scorpio, I don't think I know, it's very common to see career changes with people who have this. And with that 12th house Mercury, I wouldn't, that could be amazing for a whole, anything that's linked to the unconscious, like psychology, understanding what's beneath the surface. Because, it's a Leo Mercury, right? So, there is that love of learning, and it has the trine to Saturn, so the ability to organize the mind and all that, but it's in the 12th house, which is like, very, very esoteric and very linked to the collective unconscious. And um it squares Pluto also, which is very interesting. So there could have been criticism early on, although this usually, it's a square, so it's not like an opposition, but I still have seen that in the charts of people who received quite a bit of criticism early on. um you know Pluto is a planet of darkness, of death, rebirth, transformation. So it's in the third house. So already there is a very deep, profound nature to you, the way you think, and your thoughts, your philosophies, all that. But there could have been some clashing early on with people around you, right? Arguments. I've seen this one make people a little bit cruel in the way they speak. Um, and mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I think that especially with the Saturn opposite moon, I would not be surprised if you went through depressive periods in your life where you're really put to the, very, yeah, very, very testy. And perhaps there was just like this Pluto square Mercury added some um yeah, just like kind of like a more like it can definitely add like a more cynical view to the world, to how one sees the world. And then also like very intense and mentally challenging interactions with other people. And that could come from, like, yeah, early family experience, maybe being criticized, maybe even verbally abused. um so yeah, but like definitely I see most people with that very strongly opinionated and not typically afraid to voice that, and that can lead to some criticism. Um, so one thing about that I would say is that there's one of the lessons there is um to not overly associate or identify with your opinions and your thoughts. Some people with this, they'll be so attached to them that they'll defend them at any length. So it is very good for street smarts, right? Because it gives someone this ability to understand, like I said, the darker side of reality. So they're not just naive, like they understand the darkness that people have, and they like how low people can go from a young age. Typically, they understand this. Um, and it's really like about learning to fine tune how one communicates their ideas, right? Sometimes it can be too much, just like boom, this is like dictatorial, like this is how it is. um but then over time it becomes more diplomatic, and they can still have that same intelligence and verbal agility and all that, with the ability to not attract as much mental stress, right? Also, because it's Pluto, that speaks of your opinions and ideas, and way of communicating undergoing some massive death rebirth transformation throughout your life. I would also say, and this goes with Pluto in the third house too, that it's great for um for being like a very research based person, someone who can really become obsessed with anything they're interested in and just go full on. So yeah, but I would say also like there's potential for obsessive thoughts and difficulty when it comes to thinking positively, right? And sometimes also being overly focused on one's own thoughts and not able to really listen to others or take other people's opinions in. So what's interesting here, right, is that there is a lot of Mercury, Virgo rising. So your rising sign, your personality, Virgo rising people, they like life to be organized. You have no Taurus and you have Mars and Capricorn. Okay, so you have some Earth. So that's good. You have fire, earth, water, air. So you have every element in your personal plans. Very nice. Um, but I would say that I mean the overwhelming challenge I keep seeing, even with Venus in the 12th, right? Because like Virgo rising, like I was saying, like they can be a little bit overly perfectionist, um, and they can be sometimes too critical of themselves and critical of other people. Um, they usually have like a pretty quite analytical, and they have like a pretty organized and grounded approach to day-to-day life. I feel like Virgo risings are consistent people typically, um, who can stick to something. They can stick to something um, once they start it. It's an earth sign, right? Especially with that Mars in Capricorn, retrograde Mars. Very rare that I see that. Um, which is interesting in the fifth house with Neptune there. Mm, mm. Got my crystals. Like two crystals, like the whole I do readings. But yeah, so I think like one of the big messages I want to give you is getting out of your head and the importance to be embodied, right? And even when we talk about health, right? Um, a lot of what I see is linked, it's very psychosomatic, right? Um, so any emotional clearing that you do is going to be manifesting itself physically, right? Um, but yeah, I think that like your North Node will explain a lot of that. Put that into context more, right? Because it's in the eighth house. So it's your North Node is really asking you, which is your it's kind of like the destiny point in your chart, like it's like the mountain never climbed in past lives, the metaphoric mountain never climbed in past lives. So in Aries in the eighth house, the Scorpio house, that is asking you to learn to surrender to the universe, learn to let go, learn to really take risks in this lifetime. Um, Sometimes you need to let go of people, places, tendencies, things, whatever, in order to make room for something bigger. But sometimes there can be a fear of the unknown with with this second house Libra South Node, right? Now also there can be a fear of being alone that I see a lot with this nodal axis because South Node and Libra a lot of times they can be very, very obsessed with relationships, right? They can sometimes feel like a relationship is what defines them. So, so yeah, I think that what's paramount there is this movement towards Aries, which I always say the extreme of Libra is codependency, right? It's on a spectrum, right? So Libra, Aries, they're opposite signs. So Libra, it's like codependence. I can't live without my partner, blah, blah, blah. Right. Um, Aries, it's like so independent to the point that's not willing to make any compromises, right? So I feel like I don't see that many. Yeah, I don't see this very often, to be honest. This North Node Aries. Um, it's been a minute, hasn't it? Yeah. But anyways, I think that it's about embracing Aries energy more, which is being that pioneer, being that independent person, being that person that's not afraid to be single if that's what is better for them, right? Who learns to really develop and rely on their own willpower. Um, so you're here, there's been past lives with your South Node of Libra where you've been too defined by your relationships, right? And played it too safe. Um, and it can be difficult when you're young to stand up for yourself, or people with this typically to stand up for themselves. And one of the big life lessons is being very bold and direct, and being able to have very strong boundaries, right? And finding that real authentic identity, so important. Um, so yeah, I guess what I would say about that is that having a fire north node, it's like it's time for action in this life, right? And if you feel held back, um, like it's difficult for you to really, really like grab life by the horns and go, like that's where the growth edge is, right? And I think that you're not supposed to let go of that Libra South node. You're supposed to use the good part of Libra, the diplomacy, to being able to see other people's side of the story, right? But like I was saying, the fear of Libra, and yeah, it's very good at for yeah, with yeah, relating to other people, creating harmony, maintaining peace, all that stuff, right? But sometimes they can be too nice and avoid confrontation and stepping on someone else's shoes at all costs, right? So, and a lot of times as a child, they learn to really pay attention to the needs of others and sometimes put those needs over their own needs, right? Um, so yeah, very good at taking care of other people, especially being a Cancer sun. But then the whole thing is that you have needs too. So it really is about you know, putting that first, right? Because like I said, in past lives, it's just so natural for a South Node Libra to just be in relationship after relationship or after relationship, especially with Jupiter in the seventh house. Um, but I would say that there can be a tendency to, yeah, like I was saying earlier, to define yourself through others, right? Through your relationship. Um, and that can be a lot of times a fear of being alone, of being alone and doing it alone. So, um, mm, so it's not just the relationships; it's also with one-on-one close. It could be business partnerships. It could be really like BFF level best friend, very very close friends. Um, but yeah, putting others before yourself, right? Um, and then it can make you feel very drained, and where you're a lot of people I've met, I've seen who have these types of patterns. It's like they're giving, 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 giving. They're not receiving, receiving, and there should be a balance, right? So it's like being able to look at different relationships in their life, uh, where that balance isn't there, and having that Aries, which is the fire sign, it's like the brave Mars, courageous fire sign to just step up and really say what needs to be said. Um, because really, like the more that you have, the more you fill up your cup, the more that you're able to give to others, right? If you're always being drained by someone or something, how much are you really able to give, whether it's your job, your mission, whatever, family, friends, um, whatever area of life, right? Um, so yeah, conflict is very tough. Um, but that's where the growth is. And because you're a natural diplomat, you know, and your Mars is in Capricorn, right? Um, there's a lot of pragmatism, right? There's a lot of like pragmatism and just an ability to figure things out, in a logical manner. And it's like just not allowing someone to step on your toes, like it's like you are an independent person, and if someone isn't giving you what you deserve, what you need, making moves on that, right? So yeah, I mean, Aries is the ram, right? So I think like if you think about the identity of Aries, right? It's about a relationship with yourself. So a lot of people with this, they'll experience life events that will force them to be more self-reliant, to be more brave. And because it's in the eighth house, that's a house of death, rebirth, transformation, of the occult, the esoteric, of where you allow a part of yourself to die, a version of yourself to die in order for a new one to be born, which can be very scary. A lot of people like to stay in what they know, right? Like people with a lot of eighth house, like I have a lot of eighth house. I know a lot of people, a lot of eighth house, a lot of my clients, they are people, I always tell them, like, it's like you've lived many different lives within this one life. And they always like are like, yeah, you can say that again. Um, and of course that's true for everyone to an extent, right? Everyone goes through different phases, duh. But with the eighth house, it's pronounced way more. Um, so yeah, independence is really like where the growth edge is. Um, and I think one of the best ways you can use, because the south node, like I said, north node is the mountain you're trying to get to. The south node is the karmic, been there, done that. It's like you already had a master's degree, a cosmos master's degree in that sign, right? So Libra, so you're already very, very good at social skills naturally, right? Of course, some of the moon opposite Saturn and some of the other tough aspects could make that more difficult, but this is just typically what it is, right? So using that to create strong boundaries, right? Using that ability to understand, to kind of be like that diplomatic person, right? Um, and one way to know, and this is having Mars retrograde for you, to me, that is a very, very indicative of someone who didn't, Mars is your action. So it's like someone who either overacted or underacted in a certain respect in past lives. So in this chart, I would say that you underacted, right? That you didn't do what I'm talking about here, right? You didn't have your own back. You didn't speak up when you needed to speak up, right? So in this life, you have a more of a introverted, more of an introverted view of your actions. You're more aware of, okay, of why I'm doing this, why I'm doing that. And I would say paying attention to your instant emotional reactions, your instincts, right? Your instinctual reactions. That is really, really going to give you a lot of clues. Like, what makes you angry? When do you feel like your boundaries are violated, right? Feeling that inside yourself, those are emotions that can guide you to really take better care of yourself, and go towards that north node journey of Mars energy, right? Eighth house, Scorpio, Mars. There's two Mars signs, Scorpio, Aries, and your north node is Aries in the house of Scorpio, right? So it's like Mars, you're here to learn to be more assertive in this lifetime. It's a big thing. So I think besides that, physical exercise, strengthening the body, taking care of the body, just being active in general is really, really important. And yeah, I would say that so with Mars and Capricorn, there's definitely, I see that in so many successful people's charts, because it gives them this ability to really follow through, right? To really follow through even when the going gets tough. Um, they're able to, let's say they're doing some type of business, right? They can start and go steady, 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 because success, it's not overnight that it's formed, that it's formed, right? So um yeah, a lot of, yeah, that's a really, really good Mars sign in my opinion. So very ambitious, and some people, yeah, Mars Capricorn is it's good, it's good for money. People with that, they go towards the money, or toward not just money, that sounds a little superficial. They go towards their ambitions in a very, very, very strong way. Um, it's in the fifth house, right? So that could, have lots of different meanings. One could be children. It can make someone really want to have children, very driven to have children, be a mother. Also, it makes them potentially just like really want to be creative, really want to explore their creativity, really want to have a lot of fun. I mean, that's the fifth house is Leo, so it's all about fun, right? Um, I, Even like finding competition fun, right? Mars is like sports competition, fifth house is fun. Um, so that's interesting. And there's just a strong drive to express oneself creatively, right? Also, when I think about, okay, so this is very interesting what I'm about to say. Um, if I want to say that, yes. Is there anything else I want to, well, I can go back around, but actually, let me say this first. Just a few things about the North Node, because that's a big part of of what I find important is the North Node. Um, and we'll go back to the fifth house. Yeah, so eighth house, right? North Node. It is really about there's so many different ways, but really, like, it's like um it's also like, yes, it's in Aries, but it's also being able to, when needed, ask for help, because second house, South Node, a lot of times um yeah, sometimes like it's all about self-reliance, which doesn't really make sense. Let me think about this a little bit more, because it's in Libra in the second. So everything about the relationship stuff and independence, right? I guess how I would fine tune that is that Aries eighth house North Node is a surefire sign that someone is here to just kind of throw themselves into this deep shadow work, right? And to not kind of push themselves away from the type of work that might not be the easiest, and that maybe they've held themselves back from in past lives, but um it's what they need. So yeah. Um I would say one thing to run away from is possessiveness. Um the need to hold on to what's yours, and also just in the sense of letting go, like I was saying before, fear of loss. Um some people with that, they feel like they have to own a lot of things and have a ton of money in order to really enjoy life. Not everyone, I'm just saying that's a potential. So yeah, and also when it comes to sharing, sometimes people that they have issues with sharing. um share, potentially even, like, let's say sharing money, like in a marriage or something like that, but not, I don't know, I wouldn't go that far, but just, yeah, sharing can be difficult. Past life memories where that was not, good, or didn't turn out good. And I would say, yeah, like I was saying before, like, death, rebirth, transformation, that whole regeneration process. I would say the ultimate thing is just trusting the universe, having faith in God, and um, just knowing that as one, to be able to let go of something enables something better to come. And it's just the ultimate test, right? So, and with the relying on other people, the way I would take that is less in the relational sense, more in the sense of like, let's say like, like being able to ask for help, right? And I think that goes back to the emotional, like I was saying before with the moon opposite Saturn, being able to open up. And so it's very in that same vein, connecting those two, right? Um, so yeah, and it goes back to that whole thing of giving, 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 but like it's there's times where you need to ask and to be given. Um, Also eighth house north node, it's like, yeah, about getting deep with the mysteries of the world, the things that really interest you, the occult, esoteric, psychology, things like astrology. All these types of things are very eighth house, and they get you, it's this deeper craving, to really get beneath the surface. And with the third house Pluto, there's that potential. I don't know if you're ever interested in learning astrology. I teach one-on-one. I've had several students who have that third house Pluto. I have it too, actually. And I think it makes people just a powerhouse when it comes to research and learning something they're passionate about. So that's why I said it, because like if there is that fire for something, you're definitely able to get there, especially with that Mars in Cap. Um, so hmm, yeah. So yeah, just going towards the unseen areas of life and whatever fascinates you on that deep level. Spirituality is really important. Learning about that. Um, you learn to understand yourself better and the world better, which contributes to your spiritual growth. That's why a lot of eighth house north nodes people, or people which just have that in general, are into things like astrology, right? And the occult, um, and just truth in general. Um, I would say one thing I find very true about like with this one is that it's difficult for people with this to find meaning that isn't linked to them 100%. Like they're not necessarily people that are just going to like they tend to enjoy the chase when it comes to um going out and finding and learning things. They don't just take things at face value typically. So yeah, also I would say like going to therapy and learning about psychology, as I said before, but like going to therapy and understanding yourself on a deep level, that's a big karmic goal for you, right? Um, and that's, yeah, a lot of magic happens when people with this go and do that. Um, so and I think that through that, like with Aries being the sign, that's the quality of this, the filter of this lesson that you're trying to learn, which is the Aries lesson, the lesson of self-empowerment, right? So you getting more and more deep into yourself, deep into the world, and then finding your own fiery, maybe it's your passion, right? So yeah. And let's see. Interesting. Okay, that is very interesting. So is square the Mars is square the nodes. So that is fascinating. So when a planet is square the nodes, right? That is a skipped karmic step. Um, and Mars is already retrograde. So a lot of times when Mars is square the node. So obviously Mars rules the north node. The north node's in Aries, and Mars rules Aries, right? And Venus rules the south node from the 12th. So also I would say that like the theme of karmic love, and you can take that for however you want to take it, right? But that would be a theme that would show up a lot, different karmic relationships in this lifetime. But then also Pluto's with the south node. So people with that, like they tend to have come into this lifetime with a level of past life trauma that they brought into this lifetime. It's not super close, but it is 8 degrees, 8.5 degrees. So that is definitely definitely something. And yeah, I would just say that just it just speaks to, yeah, past lives where you may have felt disempowered, and maybe different experiences happen that may have made it difficult for you to trust. But we'll talk about that more in a sec. So yeah, with Mars, I think that a lot of people with this, they can have like unresolved anger from past lives. And it can also be like sexual feelings. Um, so a lot of this is very karmic, right? So if there's like a karmic type of anger, that's very hidden, it can be very toxic, right? Um, and sometimes when I see this, I think like, okay, it can make someone who, they skipped over their soul's original intention in previous lifetime, because South Node's in Libra. Perhaps it was because of relationships, or a relationship that they became too entangled in, right? And then it just like became their whole personality. Um, so yeah, like so what can happen is, yeah, it's like there can be this anger that person has. And also it could be a square in the nodes, it could be a skip step in terms, like I said, of taking action. And that's why your north node's in Aries, because you're here to take action in this lifetime, right? um an unmet need for independence, right, which had led to suppressed anger that's brought into this lifetime. So, what can happen in relationships is that there can be this paradox where on one side, there's this desire for being very close, right, to the partner, but then on the other side, feeling entrapped and almost like imprisoned when it's too close. So go back like this. So, anyways, let's keep going. What is this? So yeah. So I would say, do I want to go here? Um, I'd say like perhaps older people, a lot of times they have like, their like early childhood was not very, there could be some trauma there, or kind of like the period, when you learn to walk and learn to speak, how the world works, where you're just curious about everything, which is, like your Gemini moon. Um, it indicates that, that time wouldn't have been so smooth, even like traumatic in some people's lives. So, it can be very dark stuff, or just, not so dark, but difficult, right? Um, and you only have one, you don't have like, you have Pluto square Mercury, so it could just be like physical or not physical, excuse me. You know, like more of the mental kind of what I was talking about before, more of the verbal verbal abuse, like something, I know, and it's not necessarily just that young, right? Early childhood, not just, I mean, like those are kind of some rough, just yeah, I would say it's like when the personality is forming, when the child is, not just a baby, like, when they're young, right? Before being a teenager. So I think like also people with this there can be lots of family secrets, um, maybe divorce, right? And with Uranus in your fourth house, if there was a divorce, it would make sense because a lot of people with Uranus in the fourth house, they get really used to it sometimes feels difficult for them to have like a firm grounding in life. They feel like when they're younger, they have to go from moms to dads. That's at least in American clients, that's a lot how it is. I'm not sure how it works in Singapore. I imagine it's very similar because I know it's quite westernized place. But yeah, well, I'm not sure actually in that respect. I think one big thing there is feeling unheard and unseen, misunderstood. Um, some people with this had like problems, physical problems with their speech that required therapy. Um, Third house is also siblings, right? So there could be some power struggles with the siblings or some darkness with siblings if you have siblings. And then it's also like, the early school environment, right? So there can be some difficulty there too. Um, but like I said, Pluto in the third house, that gives you, when you're interested in something, you can just go crazy, crazy, and it can make you a very powerful communicator and someone who perhaps in past lives was lied to, or maybe they just believe things without going and doing the research. So in this life, they're like, no, I'm doing the fucking research, like I want all the data. I'm not just gonna believe, I'm just not gonna take this at face value what this person said, because maybe there's grave consequences in past lives, right? So also third house is neighbors, relatives. So there can be some issues with them. But in what aspects does it have? Just that square, huh? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like there's not the really, yeah, not the hard aspects aren't too crazy. So maybe it's not that like much of the dark stuff I've talked about. Um, but yeah. Um, I think also just like making sure you're very careful when you drive, just in general, right? It can make danger of accidents. Not saying there's accidents happening. I'm just saying, making sure of that. Some people with this have loss of siblings or a sibling, um, but it's not that afflicted, so I doubt that. And yeah, I think the overwhelming theme I've seen with this is just like sibling relationship that's full of friction. Now it can get better with age. Like I have this with my brother, right? And now we're pretty cool, right? We're cool. But there's definitely some rough patches where I think a lot of people in my position maybe would have not wanted to be close to that person anymore. Their sibling, right? But it's all about just sticking together and hoping that some shit changes, I guess. But obviously everyone's different in that respect. Um, yeah, there can be a sibling rivalry, but I don't really see the power struggles. But it could be a power struggle. Depends if you even have siblings, right? Um, but yeah, like I would say third house Pluto people can definitely have yeah, like I think verbal abuse, I would not be surprised at all if that was the case, like being screamed out. Um, so but yeah, also there is some level of transformation that comes from siblings if you have siblings, right? And it's not always so obvious. So yeah, and then of course it's communication. So yeah, like I said, like it's someone who is really good at keeping secrets, um, usually pretty secretive. Like people tell people with displacement, um, you know, people tell them their secrets usually, right? And it's all about like they're just like little data collectors, not with the secrets, just in general. They collect all this data and quite logical, but in the sense of like for example, the way I do astrology, right? I compile all this data in my brain, um, of what works, what doesn't work. I don't just take like what this astrologer said to be true. Like I taught myself, right? That's an extremely third house Pluto, right? Very investigative mind. But also just like a very different thinking process, thought process than most people. So it can be difficult to connect with people around you, right? It gets better with age. Um, and then even with the square with Mercury, that yeah, that can make someone very blunt with their speech. But of course, you have Saturn, Moon, but yeah. Um, but like at an evolved level, Pluto in the third is someone who what are they saying? Yeah, unevolved. I would say, yeah, it could just make someone quite aggressive and very disagreeable, right? But yeah, overall, like they're not going to just like sugarcoat their opinion. Like they're going to keep shit real, keep things very real, right? Um, so yeah, very, very good for sales and just like being very persuasive in terms of communicator, I would say. Um, and yeah, just like they need their mind needs to be occupied by something complex, fascinating. Like they, yeah, very analytical mind and mhm. Yeah, just likes to probe deep into different subjects they're interested in, right? And find the secrets of the world. So it's also, it's I mean, like it's a lot, great for writing, right? Um, so yeah, and it makes you a lifelong learner, super curious. Usually they're people who not only write, but they like to read and they like to, like I said, teach themselves. So yeah. Um, anyways, as I was saying, as I was saying, Mars. So yeah, you're the Uranus, like, yeah, like it's just like the fourth house, Uranus fourth house people, they tend to be very it's easy for them to adapt as adults because as children they had to, kind of they had to kind of get used to change, right? Um, and a lot of people with fourth house Uranus, I asked them that question, like, how fast did you want to get out of your house? And they're like, so fast, 16, 14, or not 14, but 16, 17, as fast as I could. So that's something that I've seen. And so I was going to talk about your fifth house, also fourth house Uranus too. It's like, it's very important to have like a stable home environment because and even on an unconscious level, like with Saturn fourth, like on the IC, it can make someone very, very negative. Like, so they have to kind of remind themselves to be positive and to not see the glass is half empty, right? Uranus, it can just make someone very, very like shaky up and down. Like, so grounding is really, really important for you to do grounding work, meditation, and whatnot. Um, so I think there's one thing with the Cancer, the Mars retro is like the past, like potentially ruminating too much on the past, like going over events and whatnot. Um, so I think just yeah, like in general, just being able to like not, being able to let go of shame is so important. Any kind of shame or negative emotions from, you know, before you matured. Um, Sexually, I think that there's a need for for sex that's rooted in love with a lot of these placements. But I'll talk about something that says otherwise. Um, but yeah, with Mars retro, it's like a lot of that Mars energy is directed inwards. So um yeah, that's kind of why I was saying like going back into the past and reliving experiences. Um, but like the thing is like to like it can make someone like overly spiritual, like too like spiritual where they're like really like neglecting their body's needs, their physical body's needs. So it's important to not forget that. um so yeah, fifth house, right? So I talked about Mars there already, but so fifth house also rules like that first part of love, right? Like relationships, that first part where it's like all about, you know, and I see this with so many clients. So it's that first part of relationships, right? Where everything is perfect and blah blah blah. So when you have Neptune in the fifth house with Mars, it's really important to understand that things are not as they seem. Now, you could very well be married. I read charts the same way, regardless. You know, I give all the potentials. So I would read this if you were 18, 15, 22, 72, 52. Like I would still read the same. But what I see with Neptune, because it's interesting, right? Because you can then look at it and be like, oh, damn, like I really grew from that. Maybe if he would have done the chart for me 10 years ago, it would have been way different, right? Or 15 years ago, whatever. So yeah, this is kind of my own personal research. And I find that Neptune fifth house can make people have these really just insanely deep falling in love, like falling in love fairy tale stories, but they can also die down really fast. Because fifth house is some people would say it's like the hookup stage of love. It's a very Western approach to that, but I would say it is. I mean, yeah, I guess, but it's more so like that start. Every love story has a start. Um, yeah, the fifth house, like Mars. The thing it's in a conservative sign. If it was in like a very like a sign like Gemini or I don't know, then yeah, it might indicate promiscuity, but it's in Capricorn, right? So Capricorn is very measured, right? It's not gonna act a fool, as they say. But yeah, also Neptune fifth house. There's like a very spiritual, artistic nature when it comes to using your intuition to create through your intuition. Um, it could give a it can make the whole having children experience very deeply spiritual. Um, and yeah, just the ability to create through create through like really connect to your intuition and create through that. I think one thing I love about Mars fifth house in Capricorn is that it can give you the ability to take your passion and make that the money maker eventually. Like because with midheaven in Gemini, as I've said, there and with the moon there, right? You want to have an emotional connection to what you're doing. Um, so you could have two things. You could have your what pays the bills, depending on your situation, right? Or what pays the bills, or maybe if you have kids and you're the mother, right? that, that could be one part of the Dharma. And then there's the thing you love to do, right? Maybe it's astrology. I always use that example because it's freaking obvious, right? But maybe it's painting, right? And over time, being able to transform that. So like it's very good at organizing in that sense, right? Organizing the self to um make the thing that they do for fun their job. Like I have a similar thing with, I love doing astrology. It's my job. That's an example, right? So Jupiter in the seventh, like I said, I already talked about that. Very, very lucky for relationships. And yeah, really like developing your philosophies through your relationships and your idea of truth, right? Of universal truth, of just like overall truth, right? And usually it's spiritually inclined partners, as I said. And yeah, just beneficial relationships for your life, right? That's tend to be attractive. And Jupiter in Pisces is very interesting because Jupiter makes everything bigger. So in the sign of Pisces, that just makes someone very, very, it's very, very compassionate, very giving. Um, they really want to kind of be there for humanity in a sense, right? Um, so it's a nice placement. And seventh house is also clients, right? So it could be someone who is yeah, really like attracts a lot of clients in whatever they do, and has very, an amazing ability to heal their clients or heal people that they come into close contact with, right? I think one thing with relationships is like having a very shared ideal, like a common faith within you two. Um, whether it's like spirituality, music, things like that can really strengthen the bond. Um, but yeah, yeah. Let's see here. So then the eighth house, right? You have the North Node. We talked about that. Vesta also. So that's someone who usually is very committed to discovering the mysteries of life and to go, to understand metaphysical truths and all that, getting beyond the superficial. And then with work, Vesta and Aries is they're usually self-motivated, right? It can be very entrepreneurial. Um, so it can make someone good at working or enjoy working for themselves or alone. But then having that South Node in Libra gives you the ability to really connect with other people. Then your sun is in the 11th house, which is all about humanity and finding like-minded people to work on, your like 11th house. I feel like in the coming times, a lot of people who have 11th house, like they're really gonna be called into their mission a lot, right? And if you want to do, most people, what they do is they do this reading, you already have the follow-up, and then they add the current astrology. So I'll give you a discounted price. You just have to remind me. I'll give you 260 if you're interested, and it becomes, instead of just the 1 hour follow-up you have already, um, around 3 hours total, where we go over your current astrology, what's happening now, and what's ahead for you. So let me know if you want to do that. I'll write down in my notes that I offered you a discount. Usually it's like three something. Let me go find that. So offer 260. Most people do that, and it's very magical. But yeah. So 11th house people, a lot of times, yeah, they like it. They there's lots of like kind of trials and tribulations and different periods of their life, and they really want to get to this place where they're doing something for humanity in some way, right? Okay. So midheaven we spoke about. I think that, yeah, just like have like you really need a lot of stimulation in your career or in your kind of big picture life per se, right? Now there's also Chiron, right? So Chiron with the moon, that can speak to, wounding around, I like to say the mother, but at least the emotional nurturing either on or early on, but it can create a great healer, very empathetic person, because a lot of times they felt rejected by, parent figure. Usually it's the mother, but like I don't like to, like I said, I could see it going other anyway. Sometimes the moon in in today's world is the dad, right? Oftentimes it's the mom, but it makes someone very, very good at looking out for loved ones and being very, very good at nurturing others. But the question is, how can you nurture yourself? It goes back to that theme of giving, 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 right? Now, Black Moon Lilith in a chart, this represents kind of our dark side. It's not necessarily something that manifests, but it's like I always describe it as like when we fall into our lowest potential, right? So I would say fear of rejection is big with Gemini, um, where they might be like terrified of other people's opinions and really want to be accepted by everyone, and they might like push away their authentic self, right? Which is a big thing we talked about, to fit in. So it's about really like defining your own individuality, right? Which goes through that whole shadow work. So it's like asking yourself, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for approval? Um, so yeah. I would say also Black Moon Lilith and Gemini, one like with some people I've seen it, you know, it's just really, really important not to lie, not to kind of like, have, to really, really be straightforward, and that's a North Node in Aries also is asking you to be very straightforward with like with your desires, with what you want. So yeah. Um, and then 10th house, it could be in the area of career and of dharma that energy can come out in. Um, Also, it could also relate to, yeah, intellectualizing emotions, as I said before, right? Um, so really being careful about what you say as well. Um, like I said, with Pluto square Mercury, it can sometimes, people can sometimes express themselves in an aggressive way. They really want to share what's on their mind, whether it's appropriate or not. They just want to get it out, which can be like overly domineering sometimes. So, um, yeah, people with that sometimes can feel like, yeah, no one gets them. Um, and yeah, just like like I said, detachment from emotions. So, yeah, the key is to find people who you really vibe with on a deep soul level. Um, and yeah, like just like getting past a lot of people with that. Yeah, they felt like shamed early on when they were speaking their mind, and sometimes they just shut it off. But it makes someone very, very good at really uncovering people's true intentions, right? Like a very, very good, like, someone who can kind of get to the bottom of things, right? And yeah, yeah. So tricking others is another thing that can, you know, come up. But I think the best outlet is writing, journaling, and just speaking your mind, as I've said many times in different ways. Um, so and then Chiron 10th house could be someone who's meant to be a healer, you know, who's meant to, so a lot of times they have to get past, um, different feelings of inadequacy, um, like not feeling like good enough or something in how they express themselves, um, or like kind of like insecurities about putting themselves out there in the world and career path. They can be very unsure of that, but like it's very, very common for healers to have that. And then Gemini, I see that with so many of my clients, and like I've even gotten good at guessing the Chiron sign before even seeing it. And Chiron and Gemini, yeah, it's just like it tends to be someone who maybe early on thought maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe there's something wrong with my way of thinking or my ideas, and then they kind of shut themselves, you know, off from that. They don't trust their own thought processes and they might fear communicating, right? So, and yeah, speak to some of the things I've spoken about already about maybe a painful early schooling, early childhood, but really, really good healing ability for people around you. Now, part of fortune with your son in Cancer is really showing that like by you having a spiritual relationship with yourself, that and like a deep relationship with yourself and really going within and creating firm boundaries as well is a big part of that, right? Independence, that is where you are at your best. And the more you're able to nourish yourself, right? The more you're able to nourish others. So also it's great for children and that whole birthing process, and that can just be very, very healing in itself, right? And once again, 11th house, having a common goal with people around you, and yeah, just like having like-minded people, right? And I think like achieving your life goals in connection with other like-minded people. So yeah. Mm, mm. Yeah, so a lot of people with that have like very humanitarian causes for what they want to do in life. Um, Now Mercury 12th house, very important. I want to add to that is that like you can be very like I was just at a NBA basketball game, 20, 30,000 people in the stadium, and like I have a lot of this like Neptunian energy. So it's like a good example is like I always tell my clients like, you know, if you're around like you might not know what's yours and what's someone else's in terms of thoughts. Um, so like especially in like large groups of people. So I always say like spending time alone is really, really important. And like for in my example, right, I was with around like so many people. I come back home, I feel like I had like kind of like not a panic attack, but I was feeling panicky after the game. Like when I was driving home, people were drinking, I wasn't drinking, and I got back home and I got centered into my own energy, and then things kind of calmed down, right? So it's just like that awareness that sometimes when you're thinking certain things, it might not be you, it might be you. So that just adds the importance of boundaries and not having negative people around you because they can really, really affect you negatively. Especially with the square to Pluto we talked about earlier. And then yeah, Venus 12th house, I would say I would say sometimes people with that they can be too they have to work um harder to find like that self-love, that self-esteem. But they can also it also gives a lot of spiritual protection and ability to be very, very just like understand things, like tapped into the collective unconscious. Like, I'd say dream journaling would be very, very powerful. And um yeah, being able to like with Mercury there too, like translate the unexplainable into human words is something I've seen with that, maybe in an artistic way. Who knows? So with love, right? Venus and Leo, they love like they value fun. They value kind of being able to express their inner like partners who can express their inner child. They can express their inner child with who can kind of unlock that moon opposite Saturn energy. And when you have Juno in Sag, also people sometimes with that fourth house, it's like they might like be attracted to someone that is either foreign or just where there's that philosophical kind of shared ideal as I talked about before. And the fact that's with Saturn, just that's a very strong indication for marriage, for very fated marriage. Um, Sometimes people, with that will marry someone older, someone who is really, really, you know, into what they're doing, their mission. Maybe they have a strong social standing. Um, but they really are concerned more with longevity and like with building very solid foundations at in the relationship, right? And yeah, like really wanting, yeah, domestic harmony and all that. So it's like you're building the foundation. If it's like a metaphoric skyscraper, it's like you need you know, the foundations to be very, very solid before you can build that skyscraper. So, and of course, yeah, Moon and Gemini person in love, yeah, they need variety. They need someone who they're, yeah, intellectually connected to, and who 10th house, yeah, I mean, like North Node Aries, who's where there is that fair give and take energy, and where in the relationship, like they can have space when they need to, and things are just kind of understood, and where they're not so codependent, right? Where both partners have their own lives, and they're not just like so like this, because that's very South Node Libra. Um, so yeah, and then like Palace 12, like really, really good at understanding like deep spiritual teachings. And I'd say Palace and Leo just gives like a very, very creative mind, very creative mind, someone who likes to play with words, very creative with writing, and getting their point across. And then Sirius in, these are asteroids, right? Like in first house Virgo, I would say, you know, people with that usually love to be of service, and they are really good first house at carrying, very comforting energy to other people, and very, yeah, comforting, caring, nurturing. So yeah, it really gives like a very warm nature that people are attracted to. Also, Mercury ruling your chart. I usually see this more with Gemini, but Virgo also, it can make someone keep a young, like stay looking young for longer in their lives, a youthful kind of energy, or like, yeah, energy slash just how they look. And of course, it's all linked to like how they take care of themselves, right? But a Virgo rising, they tend to be very quite good at that very thing. Um, let's see here. Okay. So you have the star of astrology with the Chiron. So that could literally indicate that Urania, that you astrology could be part of your healing journey, or your journey to heal others in some way. So you take it for whatever you want to take it for or as. What's this one? And yeah, just like being very in touch with your inner child, right? It's importance. And so you have three rural stars that are like somewhat close to important points. Fomalhaut is close to the ascendant, close-ish. Regulus close to the ascendant, close-ish. Aldebaran close to the moon, and even actually all of them. Well, actually, no. Yeah. But what I would say with just world stars in general is that people can like people can seek revenge. When people seek revenge, it's just really, really important to not, or when people do bad things, it's really important not to seek revenge, because people can be quite jealous of you. whether you realize it or not. That can be, that's something that I see a good amount. And let's see. Yeah, so I'd say Marquette with Jupiter can make you, it can just be really good for like large ventures, with like in, career and the world. Um, Anything legal, right? Like anything, any kind of legal matters, just making sure that, any kind of contracts, all that stuff, that you're very, very dialed in, and anything important, hiring the best lawyers, not doing that during Mercury retrograde. So yeah. So yeah, but as long as one's careful with kind of not jumping into things, I think having like the Mars and Capricorn is usually quite good at that. There can be really good gains in, all areas of life, business, any kind of ventures. So yeah, that is everything. So let me know. Do screenshot. So yeah, let me know if you want to if you want to add the current astrology. Like I said, I do astrocartography also. I do every kind of reading, compatibility. Some people, they just want to do every reading. And I always give very good prices for that if interested. And I teach astrology one-on-one also. Just saying that because I saw some stuff in your chart that is, and some people, when they become my students, there's different goals, right? You have people who want to, learn astrology to be an astrologer. You have other people who want to learn astrology just personally, just for their own life, right? For the spiritual journey. Astrology is a spiritual journey in itself, right? So yeah, that's there too. All right. Well, lots of themes, and I kept it under 2 hours. Trying to do 90 minutes, but so hard. Um, so I hope you enjoyed. And this is a very short wait time. This is like crazy. It used to be like 4 or 5 months, but I chilled it out this year a little bit. So now my wait list is not long. So happy that you could get it in a short amount of time. And happy new year. I hope 2024 is amazing for you. And yeah, let me know. And just if you, yeah, like regardless, you have the follow-up. So most people, they watch it several times, teach their own, take notes. And then yeah, you can let me know when you want to do the follow-up. The best way is to reach me via email, jesseinnocentastrology@gmail.com. And I hope you have a great day slash night, morning, whatever part of the day it is when you're watching this. All right. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye. Thank you.